Sup? Hey there, hi. I am Samara Jade Sendek. Welcome on in to get your booger hook off the bang bang switch. Before we get on with the rest of that mess, a couple of notes. Number one, that's an imposter. That's Jade and Sam. That's my body double. As you can tell, I'm a brunette, and that is very much a blonde. Secondly, I want to give some acknowledgements, respects, and my sincerest thanks to, I forget the name of the traditional owners of and custodians of the area of Wellington, but they have been putting up with me and my shenanigans for the past 48 hours, and I am deeply grateful and respectful for it. The final thing of note, I wish to call attention and further condemnation to atrocities being carried out in Somalia, Armenia, Ukraine, and Palestine. Now, with all that out of the way, I'm a writer, narrative designer, and QA wench based out of Narm, or so-called Melbourne. I specialize in working with large and established IP. My credits include Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and Victoria 3. I am a Gunakone and Palawa woman. I am also an ex-MMA fighter, and I'm learning how to be a DJ. I also have a lot of published credits in not quite AAA space, mostly indie and tabletop, but I also am published in Agenda Euphoria collection of essays. Now, most people who have been to one of my talks know what I'm starting with, a pithy quote. Readers will stay with an author no matter what the variations in style and genre, as long as they get a sense of story, of character, of empathetic involvement. Alternatively, we have the tweet that prompted the whole talk. So, as the title suggests, we're talking about a very silly thing today. Not trigger discipline, that is very sane and reasonable. Take notes, America. The silly thing happens to be English in video games. Everyone is a self-professed writer with no portfolio and a mostly clean record of not failing high school English. At least right up until it's 6 months from launch and you have zero story, no context for anything, and the pixels on the screen are just pixels. Then it hits you. My game is a cutesy, overcooked clone. I should make a bunch of bad jokes. Except delay after delay hits you, and you might have to reckon with getting a qualified writer. But then 2 or 3 weeks in, said qualified writer is looking for a quick exit because no force on this planet can save the writing. Totally not speaking from personal experience. I know one person in this room knows. Please don't be this person. You don't want me on art, programming, or sound, and I sure as shit do not want a marketing spook handling the writing. If you're multidisciplinary, great, but please have the chops to back it up. Now, some obligatory lines. English is 3 Germanic languages in a trench coat, pretending to be classical Latin with an ancient Greek accent, while pilfering everyone else's words because why not steal their languages as well as their artifacts? Soulless bastards. Narrative design is a distinct job from writing. Yes, your game tells a story. No, of course the story doesn't have to appeal to hardcore grinders. Yes, you can have hardcore story fans, they're called gatekeepers or lore buffs. The hero's journey is a white supremacist framework in literature. Yes, you need a narrative bible at the start of production. No, I'm just on caffeine and nothing stronger. All of this is necessary to know, but baby steps, eh? Firstly, we're going to contradict everything that I just said. Everyone talks about English as a bad language to learn, worse to communicate with, and nobody can agree on where the commas go. But there are strengths. To have a complete sentence, all you need is a subject and a verb. As some examples, warriors yarning, punching Nazis, condemning fascism, anti-capitalist rioting, impregnating pineapples. And we can say the same messages in very different ways. Soldiers bickering, assaulting dickheads, rebuking stupidity, civil discourse, growing trees. And for a bonus round, let's go with things that people would actually say. Some troopers over there are shooting the bull. Micah speared some white supremacists the other week. A legend dunked tomato soup on a turf. We're starting the workers' revolution. I don't know if anyone actually knows V. Pendergrast from Code, but she's legally advised me that I should not have finish the line about impregnating pineapples there. Use your imaginations. The thing that you're saying is the same thing. In some cases, you're using euphemisms. In others, more direct language. Putting this into practice, you can have 3 characters voice assent to X thing. Let's say they're in some turn-based strategy with black comedy to light the mood. Let's punch some Nazis!
Let's assault some dickheads! Spinifus and some white supremacist precious!
These same words, inflected a different way, conveys a different mood. Now, let's add a couple more words for context and change the tone to something more sober. Well, nothing for it now. So let's punch some Nazis.
I could go for that. We only live once. Let's assault some dickheads. We died as we lived, precious. Spinifus and the white supremacists.
That already gives us some details into who these characters are, but I've named them here serious, upbeat, and manic. Serious uses the least amount of words to convey the point. Upbeat adds some purplish flair to the sentence. And Gollum is just Gollum. But the point is, this all conveys character. Well, duh. And you're absolutely right, this is a cleverly disguised eat your vegetables talk. Now, let me ask you this. How many times in one game session can you stomach hearing, Thanos scum! Or, I will destroy you! For me, I nearly gave up on my first playthroughs of Warframe and Mass Effect. Variety's nice. But there's a right and a wrong way to do this. It's one of those things that players notice, even if they're still bickering about what ludonarrative dissonance really means. They can't quite pick out why, but when they hear that jarring line over and over again, it makes the experience clunk. I've got some examples that might shed some light on what I mean. I'm using AAA examples here, but the same thing applies to indie games. In fact, more so. You can't waste resources. For a good example, let's break it down from the top. This Spanish line is something you'll only hear in one section of Resident Evil 4 Remaster. At first, it's a murmuring chant and everyone says it. If there's a ganado nearby, you'll hear it. Aprisa, se escapan los codritos. It's a creepy monotone that doesn't stop even after you bisect them with a shotgun. It's only when the enemy despawns that it stops. Aprisa, aprisa! They're bleeding out, as they say, as they're bleeding out from 10 warning shots to the skull. At the end of the level, the classic house siege at the end of a rural villa, they're shouting it, like their attempts are frustrated. By changing the inflection, you've changed the mood from quiet horror to furious terror. Now, on the other end, Thanos scum is practically the mascot of Warframe, and more so than the cyborg ninja gunslingers in space. You only hear it from one faction, and you hear it everywhere you encounter them. Unlike the Ganados, the Greniers shout this to the rafters to fill dead air, basically. No insights, no further characterization, and in the earliest builds, it's all they would say. Sure, it conveys enmity and sets the tone for the battle, but when that's the tone of every battle, it's like eating nothing but tofu. Variety's nice. I love water. Back to the good, and also from Resident Evil 4 is everyone's favorite masked madman. What are you buying? Sweet relief to the players as they can manage their inventory, get a new weapon, or flog off the 20th precious gem that they've just colonized out of the area. At first, the merchant is a strange man in a trench coat with a weird accent and enough firepower to annihilate most of Auckland. Over time, as the players find him to offload their stuff, he becomes less a stranger and more a friend. With these positive associations, the player wants to engage with them. But this repetition is a risk. Without positive association, the merchant becomes a chore, and his memetastic voice becomes as annoying as the next entry. I will destroy you is something that made me dread doing side quests in Mass Effect 1. Personally, I'm glad that Mass Effect 3 pivoted and made a joke of it. If nothing else, it's a neat admission of what went wrong before. And what went wrong before is the same thing as what went wrong with Warframe. The advice, so nice I'm saying it twice, is outside of saying there's an enemy here and it's of this type, it's not doing anything. And when it's every second line, it goes from threatening to annoying in a heartbeat real fucking quick. With these kinds of barks, they can be anything but annoying, unless you plan to pull a Star Wars and porgify them. Again, it carries risk. You can make a meme of it, sure, but players may well bite you for it. And the next example came eerily close to that happening. Geralt's trademark, I'm a Witcher, straddles this line in a big way. But it does a few things right. I'm a Witcher is a statement of being in a world unlike ours. It's also a sales pitch to an NPC. I can solve your monster problem. For an unfamiliar player, it's an odd word to hear. It doesn't exist in the common English lexicon. So, and because of that, and it's repeated so much, it glues to the player's mind. So over time, with the positive association, and a kick-ass character to boot, players become less fixated on, I'm a witch, and more, I'm the monster-slaying mutant the X-Men wish they had. The context here is critical. YouTube critic Joseph Anderson makes a similar note in his series, I think it's a 9-hour long YouTube series just breaking down the Witcher games, and we're still waiting on Witcher 3. And it's been years. Definitely check it out if you want some greater context on this. Now, the big backfire here comes from none other than The Legend of Zelda. So before I get there, I'm going to give everyone a chance here to head me off at the pass. Who do you think has grinded everyone's gears since Ocarina of Time? Anyone want to shout it out? What was that? There you go. It's Navi. Navi gets a special mention here because she was actually designed to be that way. She was designed to stick out and get the player's attention. The intent was also a handy helper with targeting and navigation. In effect, she's a funneling companion that takes agency away from the player. Because,
hey, listen, hello?
Is the level designer and writer both saying, go here, do thing. This is as much a language failure as a design failure, and they make each other worse. Don't command, offer. Navi commands, and it's to her own detriment. I swear I was clicking the buzzer again. It's never one of my talks unless there's a technical fault. So, how do we bring all of this together? What's a good way to practice? How about a genre? Real-time strategy games have context and repetition down to a science. Every situation that needs confirmation gets it. GR's ready! And retribution has come for Bologna's enemies. Say the same thing. You have a new unit. How kick-ass that unit is varies, but it's ultimately the same thing. You have a new unit. You attack, you get a response, you force stop them, you get a response, that 100-ton mech dies, you get a death scream. Information is critical. But it is an excuse not to relay character as well. Veterans of the golden age of the RTS genre might remember Tanya's evil laugh, or the first time they clicked on a Warcraft peasant one too many times, and got a story about how a horse kicked him once. A cycle of good responses to context, attacking, defending, dying, poking them one too many times, conveys mood, tone, setting, and other bits and bobs. All you're doing is rewording, I am here, I will kill them, and help me, I'm dying. Unfortunately, this also means not enough minerals happens in these games. There's only so much budget for those variations, to be fair. And it's less of a problem for, say, StarCraft or Company of Heroes. They're big names with big games with big names. And if you're not them, you have to get creative. The Homeworld series, a little bit ironically, leans on dry, matter-of-fact delivery from a handful of VOs. You're playing a 3D axis strategy, so you have to cut the chaff where possible. But in short, for something like an RTS, you have to remember your golden rule for road safety: don't distract the driver. And variety's nice. Now, emotionality is key. No emotion in the writer, no emotion in the reader. As above, so below with games. No engagement in the designer, none in the player. If there aren't hooks and implied data, no experimentation. Players have to learn, not be taught. Remember Navi: offer, don't command. Remember RE4: play on player emotions and get them engaged. And I kid thee not, if you've done this right, that's when you'll start seeing fan art. Prose, animation, art, lore discussions, it's all a fantastic marketing vector, and it's a massive shot in the arms to a flagging studio. And if you want to know how to screw that up, look at Games Workshop issuing all the takedowns it's doing on YouTube of late. So, what about the other end of the spectrum? Delivering a character's epic cornerstone lines. Emotional resonance isn't easy. Clever use of language and mechanics are a good step in the right direction. Now, if your narrativists, designers, artists, and other plot-relevant peeps know the plan from day one, you can make something truly magical. Titanfall 2 pulled this off. And if you haven't played through yet, I recommend you flick through anything from Respawn. It pays to learn from their mistakes as well as their accomplishments. Now, has anyone thought about try to head me off here with what's special about Titanfall 2? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, nope. The Jar of Lightning is in these, is basically comes in 3 lines that you hear from BT7274, basically throughout every mission. Protocol 1, link to pilot. Protocol 2, uphold the mission. Protocol 3, protect the pilot. And not only through this are you conveying BT7274's character, its relationship to the player Jack, and its place in the world of Titanfall. This is actually the elevator pitch for the entire plot. Every sentence states an objective that this game is going to do for you. The first third is tutorials and easy sections. You're training with Captain Lastimosa, the first combat drop, moving with the pilot kit to understand BT's health pickups, and you wrap it all up with a Titan level against a Titan boss. Now, the next act, Link to Pilot, you onboard and sell the experience. The second third is about why you're there. You investigate a space Nazi superweapon and you figure out how to stop it. Get some reinforcements, bail some troopers out, kick some capitalist goons in the teeth, and kill a few more bosses along the way because, really, who's counting? Excuse me. Uphold the mission. See where the plot goes. You have the setup and the story. Now figure out where it's heading. The final third begins with the player captured, the space Nazis about to win, and BT throwing itself in harm's way twice to keep you safe. Protocol 3, protect the pilot. This mech will be your best friend by the end of the game. Now, as a small bet for anyone who hasn't played it yet, just a side note, who actually hasn't played Titanfall 2? That's nearly the entire room. Okay. I think you can get it for about $20 on Steam now. Highly, highly recommended. And as a small bet to nearly everyone in the room, finish the game without crying. Anyone who has finished the game, no spoilers, I know you know. Just bending a character's lines with a little bit of English, some narrative design context, and kick-ass art and gameplay to go with it, you've got magic. When all of that's pulling together, It doesn't matter if it was a masterstroke of in-the-moment writing, good editing, or a sudden realization after the fact. As long as there's time to implement it, it can be done. Good writing is doable. Great writing is a lightning strike. Nothing can save bad writing, though. English is horrible, yes, but don't let familiarity breed contempt. A character is as much their language and mannerisms as their costume and body type. Players like engaging with characters and their emotions. And please, can we hire writers and narrative designers early in production rather than using people like me as damage control? Anyone can put chicken scratch to a surface. Looking at you, J.K. Rowling. It takes talent to make the syllables sing. And I promise you, the ability to warp words is a very neglected talent. Leverage your strengths and pull together in one direction. And as a concluding side note, if you find yourself near a firearm, fingers off the trigger until you're actually ready to shoot. Or if you're partial to wordplay, keep your booger hooks off the bang bang switch. Thank you. Any additional rating for anything more or less connected to the material? The top one with Player in the Pentacle, local boy, Nick Jones. I heard he was back in town now. I haven't seen him. Shame. Questions? Well, need 1 second for Bluey to get down with the microphone. Hello.
There was like a slide at the start that was like narrative and writing is different. Could you talk more about that?
So narrative design and writing is different. So writing is very much like executing the words as written, and that handles the overt story. So your voice lines, cinematics, how to sometimes voice direction. Sometimes it'll be its own discrete job. Sometimes it'll be wrapped in with writing. And narrative design, that handles a lot of context and subtext. So my job as a narrative designer often means it's like, how do I get a tea cozy set over in the corner? How do I get Cthulhu waking up from his sleeping place in Relia to come over and have that tea party, all the while there's a fire going on in the background? How do I make all of that mesh? And that's what narrative design does.
Were there any other questions?
I mean, I have one. Are there any students in the room? I mean, the volunteer had their hand up first, so come up. Okay, well, we're gonna just move over a little bit. Okay, look into the camera. That way. You're now the proud owner of the speech notes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
cool. Enjoy.
Shake your hand.
Okay.
Let me stand.
All right. More seriously, any more questions? It's very rare that I'm actually that clear, so, like, is everyone's brains intact? Oh, we got one.
I'll step into the breach. I'll admit, historically, maybe because I'm coming from a Doom modding background, narrative designers was never something that I massively focused on for my own game. But that changed probably in the last 2 years quite heavily, partly because I got a very, very talented friend to do the voice acting and add some character to the character. But my question is, how would you sell the idea of narrative design to someone who doesn't think it's important for their game? Because it does seem to be almost the forgotten child of game development sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm glad the Doom modding community has very much mentioned Doom. Because John Carmack,
Oh, yes.
John Carmack has actually done a lot of damage to narrative in video games. For those who don't know, one of his famous lines is, "Story in games is like story in a porno. It's nice, but it's not expected to be there." And that basically stunted narrative design and game writing for a good 10 to 15 years. And even then, it's like he turned out to be wrong, because a lot of Doom, how that's actually stitched together and how it moves about from Phobos to Hell, then to Earth, and back to Hell, and how that moves around and shuffles around. John Romero had actually done a lot of narrative design in doing the levels, and that was how it conveyed. Additionally, does anyone actually know why Doom Guy was on Phobos in the first place?
I do, but that's cheating.
Go on, tell us.
He was sent there because he refused to fire on civilians, which was an order given to him by his commanding officer. Yeah.
Exactly. So Doom, from 92 all the way to the latest release with Doom Eternal, and I believe it got moved to 21. Doom has always been an anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist game. And that has been reflective in its narrative, in that it has always taken a stand against violence for this. Violence will be met with violence. The only way to stop atrocity is to meet it directly. And that all forms constituent parts of narrative design. It's context and context advocacy.
Where was the question?
Yep, no, down there.
Hi. This is sort of someone who only really has experience sort of writing, doing traditional writing. How exactly did you get started doing writing and narrative work in games industry, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm going to presume you mean writing prose, because there's a lot of traditional writing there. Is that correct?
Short stories, basically.
Short stories. So, yeah, short form prose. Believe it or not, how I ended up getting started, it was basically sharing high-level design plans with a couple of people on DeviantArt before it became an AI-infested hellhole. And then from there, I moved to Bark Sheets and moved to scenario writing. And then through a few lightning strikes of circumstances, I ended up doing a live Choose Your Own Adventure performance at Free Play 2019. And that was with one of the game audio fellas back in Narm, Monster Mansion. And what Jacob was doing is he was doing the live improv music, and he was singing whatever I was writing. And that was mostly about a guy leaving a company because it was run by monkeys who were throwing turds at walls to go start up an indie brewing company. And then from there, it's just a matter of I had something to point to and say, I did that. I went to Twitter before it became an AI-infested hellhole, marketed myself around, and that's how I got writing into Game of Thrones Taylor Crows. And from there, I'm sometimes vaguely funny whenever I'm doing public speaking. And now here I am. So no path is ever the same. It's find your path. Give us your heroic origin.
Awesome, cool. Were there any more questions?
Well, just to be safe, yeah, no more questions. Okay, cuppa time, everyone.